Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on page 530, talking about the types of virtual reality, the augmented reality, the immersive and non-immersive kind of things. So, next thing we're going to talk about is the uses. And so, I mentioned kind of back before about robots. The reason why we sent robots to Mars is not because we like robots, it's because we can't get there yet. So, robots go where people can't go. In some cases, medicine, virtual reality is a very good system for, once again, you're in an impoverished area on the planet, and you have one doctor in this central village, and yet you're covering this huge geographic area. I could probably have some sort of a clinician with some sort of a thing that allowed me to diagnose some child from 100 miles away. So yes, that type of virtual reality is actually kind of handy when your resources are kind of scarce. The most likely scenario is things like operating the robotic arm on the International Space Station. It's because I don't want to be out there in space doing this. I'll stay comfortably inside the cabin where there's air and I don't have to wear a bulky suit. So that's the most likely. So I have a virtual reality view of the 3D image, and I'm operating this robotic arm just like I could be operating some sort of a robotic system. They talk about education and training, but there's yeah, a 3D view of a product or a machine that's very good for training. It's also very good for selling a house. I kind of mentioned that to you before. If I'm trying to sell a house, I want to be able to have a 3D tour of a house. That technology has been around for quite some time. Okay. So let's move on and talk about the specialized versions. There are an awful lot of specialized expert systems, knowledge management kind of things going on. The first one's called assistive technology, and the example they give is a good one. It's Stephen Hawking's, and he's paralyzed, so he has a tablet that he uses to speak out words, and so the machine does the speaking for him. And there's all different kinds of these things, and so it's not just the Stephen Hawking's version, but I'll allow synthesizers for people to speak and things like that is a good example. Another example that sounds a little weird is drones. I mean, drones would be an assistive technology. I'm trying to round up my cattle kind of a thing, and so I send the drones out to find out where the heck they are before I jump on my horse and go out and round them up. Though that kind of stuff is kind of weird. Game theory. Now, game theory is not talking about playing games, okay? That's not what this is about. Game theory is about doing these really complex kind of scenarios. So, I like to talk about you're doing, let's say, for example, that you're trying to figure out the effects of an infection. Like there's a brand new virus that pops up in Eastern Africa. And so you want to see how the pandemic is going to spread and how fast it's going to spread and where you ought to put controls in place. So game theory is all about if this virus has an R0 value of this, it's going to spread at this rate. If it appeared over here, how long is it going to take to be able to get to the ships and the planes and the roads to be able to spread throughout? So it's a very complex scenario of trying to figure out how things are going to progress, just like a war game would be. You have units over here and a unit over here, and you want to just see how they would battle out and who's going to prevail and where they're going to go next. It's game theory. So very cool, but not about games. A lot of people use game theory in making financial decisions. I kind of mentioned to you before, you need to be able to say, well, if I bought 100,000 shares in this one particular technology section, is that going to effectively increase the stock prices? Perhaps I ought to spread that over a period of a couple of days so I don't start artificially inflating the prices on the very stock that I'm trying to buy. So game theory is going to say, well, now if we did this and they did that, and then we did this and they did that, it's the same thing. It's no different. Those stock example is no different than the war game example and the pandemic example. It's the same thing. It's just trying to figure out if I move next and then they move, then I move next and then they move. Okay. Bioinformatics. Actually, informatics is a good term. It's almost always used in bioinformatics. Talking about how people, technology, and information kind of all intersect, and this is the technology that or systems that they use. It's really a combination of technologies, as you can see by the graphic. But this is like what the Human Genome Project was using, is being able to have specialized people. Now, if you have a biomedical expert, health and nursing and medical expert and pharmacy experts, you put them all in the same room, they're not really going to be talking the same system. I need some sort of informatics system that can bridge the gap so they all speak the same language, as an example. Okay. Whew. We have reached the end. All right. So this is the end of the chapter, and we'll see you again in some future chapter.